It's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. C.Edward Watson. Dr. Watson is the Vice President for Digital Innovation at the Association of American Colleges and Universities. We're thrilled to have him discuss his latest book, Teaching with AI, A Practical Guide to a New Era of Human Learning, which provides invaluable insights on integrating artificial intelligence into teaching and learning practices. Notably, Dr. Watson will be presenting his research from this groundbreaking work at the upcoming TLC 24 conference on May 8th. With extensive leadership experience in higher education, numerous publications, and a focus on innovative approaches like open learning and digital equity, Dr. Watson is at the forefront of advancing quality undergraduate education. Welcome, Dr. Watson. We're honored to have you here. We're really looking forward to having you at TLC. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for the invitation for this conversation and to participate in the event in May.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for participating in that. What sort of motivated you and Jose to write the book on teaching with AI, and what gaps did you see that needed to be filled?
Well, I think for me, there were a couple of things that occurred that really set me down this road. I guess initially, my son, a student at the University of Georgia, he had came home from the semester in December of 2022 and said, "Hey, Dad, you really got to see this new thing." And I was like, "Okay, you're always trying to show me new things, but let's take a look at this one." And, he opened up his laptop and went to Chat GPT and said, "Okay, so what kinds of things would you ask students to do?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Like an assignment." So I was thinking back to one of my favorite assignments that I used to give, and I typed that in. As text began to scroll on the screen, it's sort of now memorialized within family lore that I said, "Oh no," first word out of my mouth. And it's because I instantly saw the challenges to just sort of not only academic integrity, but just sort of like the DNA to a lot of what we do in our courses. So that was the initial, inclination that got me engaged with AI. I spent maybe 4 hours that afternoon after Carter first showed me. In fact, he made me switch laptops because he needed his back because I had been using it for so long. So that was the beginning. But then in the spring, I had a colleague who was teaching a business writing class. And in her class, she had decided there would not be any dependency on AI, no AI in the classroom. And she had a student who was a non-traditional student who was working full-time. Where the student worked, she had to write a variety of different kinds of copy, like press releases and things like that. And her boss had told her, "You have to start with Chat GPT because it's going to save you a lot of time and you're going to have a pretty solid draft to work with." So boss says, "You must use Chat GPT." The college where she's being prepared for the real world tells her she's not allowed to. So the student saw a real disconnect between what was taking place within the classroom and what was taking place within the real world. And so I began to really track what was happening in the world of work and saw that we had this tension, right? There was this tension where there was an increasing expectation that students, graduates, would have AI literacy skills. But we also were experiencing sort of the inclination in the classroom to keep AI out of the classroom as much as possible. So that's a big gulf between how do we ensure students are still achieving the learning outcomes that we have for our classes, which often means we keep AI out of that mix, versus how we prepare students for that world of work that's waiting for them. So that for me was the inclination to really dive into this space to better understand it and do what I could to provide higher education with some guidance about how to navigate this new era of human learning.
That's what's so interesting about this time that we're living in is, one, you have that experience that you had of just overnight going from, everything I've built is, structurally sound and will work into the future. And then suddenly there's something that not just changed that a little bit, which is usually what we see in higher ed, but changed everything so drastically overnight, and how to adapt to that. But also at the same time, what is adapting to that? Is it, making sure it's not in the classroom? Because that certainly doesn't make sense when we see that, this week Moderna announced that they built 750 custom GPTs within 2 months. So if no one understands how to use those custom GPTs, then all of our students aren't going to get employed by those companies that require that. And so there is that sort of fine balance that we need to find of, do we teach this in the classroom? Do we push this out of the classroom? And what's sort of that balance? So I think it's really, you've hit on a really great point of how that sort of has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're already seeing in employer surveys that they're acknowledging that there is a skills gap in their applicant pools. Like, they're looking for people that have skills to be able to move into the space and be able to leverage AI, as well as a range of other skills like critical thinking and teamwork. And then, of course, if you're hiring an accountant, you need someone that's got an accounting degree. So it's like the profile of expectation is increasing dramatically. But yeah, I think you're right. It pretty much came on the landscape like this. I mean, for most of us, I mean, consumer grade generative AI, of course, appeared in November of 2022. And now, the vast majority of employers are figuring out ways to incorporate it into their work.
Exactly. Yeah. So that leads me to my next question. So your book acknowledges the potential for AI to lead to what we're seeing, which is like these inequities. But it also views it as a tool for potential equity. So can you speak about this dichotomy?
Yeah, I can talk about, about a few different elements here. I mean, one is the notion of digital equity or digital inequity, where those that have access and those that have opportunities to learn the skills may then be further ahead when it comes to competing for jobs and really other aspects of life and career. I mean, we're certainly seeing that currently, and actually maybe the pandemic magnified it even greater, with sort of, those that had access to the internet, like students in our courses, had access and had a quiet place to study, and they were given an advantage during the pandemic era over students that may have had to go to the Starbucks to gain access to Wi-Fi. Or in where I live in rural Virginia, one of the solutions was to put Wi-Fi stations, solar-powered Wi-Fi stations in various locations. And the one that's closest to my home is actually located at a trash drop-off. So imagine, I'm taking an exam here in this room, nice and quiet, just bothered by my cat a little bit, maybe here and there, versus a student who's taking the exact same exam, but they're sitting in their car at the dump where, the lids to things are crashing and there's lots of traffic and motion. And maybe I don't even necessarily feel all that safe while I'm trying to take an exam in my car on my laptop. So those kinds of digital inequities already exist, and they certainly were made clearer during the pandemic. And so I think the same sort of notion is going to be expanded with the new era around AI, where not having access to the internet is one thing, but AI isn't just access to knowledge. It's really access or opportunities to change the way that we think. I mean, AI kind of serves as a partner, as a co-pilot, as a co-intelligence. It helps us think through to solutions. So those that have access to that have a really significant advantage, not only in the quality of the solutions that they might develop, but also the time it takes to develop those solutions, over those that aren't using AI or aren't a participant in this new era. So there are some real challenges around inequities, but from a teaching and learning perspective, there's some real opportunities to create equities if students all have access or encouraged to have access. So that's one example, but also in the way that we design our courses. I mean, all of us have our own backgrounds, our own biases, where we come from, and the examples that we might use in class are probably typically personal examples from our life. But to be able to go to, an AI, like go to Claude and say, can you give me 10 different examples that would resonate with the average 18-year-old today? That's a very different kind of opportunity for those that are teaching, right? I mean, now I've got 10 different things that I could bring up in class that are of a range of different examples that would resonate with different students. I know that whenever I'm in class and I'm teaching and I have a student ask me a question, like I just explained something and they say, I'm sorry, Dr. Watson, I don't understand what you just shared. Could you restate that? And I would often answer it with exactly the same examples that I just gave that they didn't understand the first time. So now here I am doing it a second time. But one time I was teaching and I did that sort of play with a student in the front. And then after I explained it the second time, another student said, no, it's like that line in that Beyonce song. And then everyone in class was nodding. And I was like, wait, what just happened? What this example that I'm not sure that I'm tracking. Now everyone understands the concept that I was describing. So being able to come up with a diversity of examples that would resonate with a broader set of students indeed provides us with some opportunities to meet some of the equity goals that we might have in our classes and our courses.
Yeah, I definitely think that makes a lot of sense. So you're saying it's a tool for equity from the provider standpoint, from the instructor standpoint, that they can provide more equitable solutions to their students using that technology as compared to, the inequity that's created by people not having that access to it.
Yeah, I think it's like many things. There's a gray area, right? There's definitely going to be opportunities or examples where potential inequities are going to be magnified as a result of access and not having access. But then those that are using the technology can make some choices to actually think about inclusive pedagogical practices and design their course using the tool to be able to reach a broader audience, to be able to resonate more clearly with more of your students within your class.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I've personally used it in my class to bridge the gaps between readings. So you provide the students with a reading and they need context for what they're even getting from that reading. And then on top of that, they're also going to need an understanding leading up to that. You don't know where they came from up until this point. And so having the AI provide a little bit of scaffolding content, some content that leads up to what they're learning, can be helpful for some of the students. And you don't know until they ask. And when they ask, it's often too late. So having AI provide that sort of feedback up front can be really helpful for a lot of your students.
Absolutely.
So to that point, you provide recommendations on redesigning not just resources in the class, but assignments to make cheating less rewarding for students. Can you give an example of something that discourages cheating? And can you talk a little bit about projects that would use AI and would work without it? So both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I could probably talk for days on this one, so I'll try to drill down quickly to some brief examples that might be helpful. I guess the number one place that I start with faculty is sort of like highlighting the real scope of cheating. Like sometimes I'll be on a campus and I'll have someone pull me aside and say, look, I think all of my students are cheating. And it's like, yeah, that's probably not the case. In fact, there was a press release earlier this month, and I'll talk about this whenever I'm speaking in May. But there was a press release earlier this month from turnitin.com where they had said they were heralding their year anniversary of doing AI detection, and that they had reviewed over 200 million pieces of student work. And that was K-12 and higher ed, but that's a massive swath of student writing. And of that, 22 million were flagged as having 20% or more AI content. So 22 million out of 200 million. That means it's about 11% of students were turning in AI-produced work. So in a class of 30, that's like 3 students. So that's the scope of the problem that we have. There's a small percentage of students within our courses that are indeed cheating. So what might we do then to move them away from cheating? AI detection is not the solution. The false positive rate is exceptionally high, and with the crisis that we have currently in higher ed from a student mental health perspective, and also just the decline in confidence in higher education in general, the Gallup survey show it's sort of at an all-time low. So yeah, AI detection is not a solution in this space. So it's like, what can we do in our classroom? Teach the class of 30, you've got 3 students. How do you nudge them away from deciding or choosing to cheat? So one example is, give some flexibility within the classroom. So regarding due dates and the like. So, why do students cheat? Number one, it's like they have opportunity, but number two, there is they feel that they're under pressure. And so a lot of non-traditional students like me, I was a first-gen student. I worked 30 hours a week, at most weeks whenever I was in college. Whenever you're under pressure, that's when you might consider doing things that you really shouldn't be doing. So imagine if you're given 5 papers in a course or 5 projects, whatever it might be. And for 3 of those 5 projects, any student at any point during the semester can ask for a 48-hour extension. I mean, we ultimately want students to do the work. I mean, that's when the learning takes place, is if you're actually doing the work. So if you just provided a window for students to say, hey, I need an extra couple of days to get this work done. And I had a colleague share, well, that's not how the real world works. You don't get to just ask for extensions. And I'm like, well, that's exactly how the real world works. We always, we're all doing that. We're making choices. We try to get things done, and we want to do the best work. And so we're asking, hey, my kid was sick. Can I have an extra couple of days to get this done, or whatever it might be? So actually, you are teaching students real life skills for making the decision regarding when they feel it's appropriate to ask for this extra couple of days. So again, problem of 3 students, you give those 3 students an opportunity to have a couple of extra days. Probably not all 3 are going to cheat. Maybe it's just, 2 or 1 that would make that choice. I think invariably there are students that are always going to cheat. So I don't know whether that's something that we will ever be able to fix. But there are certainly students who want to do the work, who want to do the right thing, but, life makes it difficult sometimes. And so maybe they would pivot to then have AI produce some percentage of text. So flexibility in the classroom is one thing. But I guess what I think regarding AI is that AI is really changing the very definition of what is average work. AI can kind of produce average work. So then what might we do in our assignments then to actually embrace that partnership that is a human AI partnership in producing work, which is what the real world is expecting more and more. So having assignments that expect there to be a partnership, but then also the expectation is that the students would be adding more to the work so that the final product is even greater than what AI could have produced. So pushing students to higher order learning outcomes. So probably some of the viewers right now are familiar with something called Bloom's taxonomy, where you've got, just sort of understanding and memorization is sort of like lower level learning outcomes. But at the top of that chart, or top of that pyramid, is being able to evaluate content, to be able to create content. And those are skills that are going to be needed increasingly in the real world. So rethinking assignments that are less about production and a final product, but more about evaluating a draft that's produced by AI, and then expecting that the student would revise and create something that would be of greater quality than if they had done it by themselves alone, or AI had done it by itself alone. So that's just one example of a couple of examples, I guess, there of ways to rethink assignments really in service to better preparing students for life after graduation.
Yeah, and I think that higher order thinking is a really great sort of concept to really emphasize, because whenever we get these situations where people are saying, hey, I put this in to Turnitin and I got a, 80% AI detection rate, these folks, that could all be from Grammarly, that could all be a false positive, that could all be from, English language learners who, learned the language in a very rote way. But one of the first things that I say to them is talk to your student about why this happened, and then talk to them about their understanding of the content. Because in the end, if you walk away and you have a feeling that they have a full understanding of the content, then you've almost sort of done the work. You don't really need to look further into that AI detection. Well, you can, but you don't need to look further into that, because you've just proven that your student understands the concepts and is working at the level you're expecting them to work at.
Yeah, the whole thing about AI detection is troubling for so many reasons. Just going by the numbers that Turnitin made public again on that press release on April 9th, they said that there were 22 million pieces of work flagged with 20% AI or more. Their own self-reported false positive rate last year was 4%. So 4% of 22 million is 880,000 pieces of student work falsely tagged as being AI produced. So you think about the adversarial culture that is produced by that many students being falsely accused of using AI. In fact, when we were doing our focus groups as we were concluding the book, we heard over and over again students say, oh, we're not worried about being caught using AI. We're worried about being falsely accused of using AI for cheating. In fact, we all know someone that has happened to. It's part of student culture. This has emerged as an element. And so students are now paying subscription fees to different tools so that they can test their work before they turn it in. And I had one student say that they tested their work and it said there was a 37% chance it was created by AI. They knew they produced it themselves and they were terrified to turn in their own work because of these black box AI detection tools. And like, they didn't know, how do I not write like myself? Like, that's what they were trying to figure out, is how do I not write like I've been taught my entire life? So this is really problematic. But then there's the other side of the coin, are the false negatives. Like, who gets through? And what we found is, if you're using the latest paid versions of the tools, so the latest version of ChatGPT, the latest version of Claude 3 Opus, it produces better quality writing. They can better mimic our voice if we give it samples of our writing. And so who is likely to be paying for the tools? Well, it's certainly not the Pell eligible students. So this is a very inequitable strategy within its DNA, is that we're more likely to catch the Pell eligible students than the affluent students. Is that really a tool we want to use? I guess ultimately, given these false positive and false negative realities, I always ask faculty, are you willing to be transparent, like on your syllabus in writing, about these issues that we know exist? And if the answer is no, if you're not willing to be transparent with your students, you probably shouldn't be using these tools.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's important to emphasize, the student that you mentioned who wrote their essay entirely themselves, uploaded it to check, which is now adding an extra step to their learning and their process, and discovered that their writing was detected as AI 30%. Now are they going to go through and damage their hard work? Not just their hard work on this essay, but their hard work of the years of learning how to write cleanly and properly that now is indicative of AI in a way that's problematic for them. And that causes a huge inequity in just considering how the students are doing their work now and how they may be even damaging their work.
Yeah, it's an interesting, college work is difficult enough, college life is difficult enough, but then to add this extra layer in, it's like, is the advice to students, please don't use any of the free detectors out there because it's just going to drive you crazy if you do have that? Or, is it a protective measure? I mean, this one particular student, she saw it as a protective measure. Like, I have friends that have been falsely accused. So, I want to make sure that I don't get falsely accused. I have to go through what they went through. In fact, I had one student that we talk about in the book. She was falsely accused of using AI. And so she went and found her professor's last single authored article and took the abstract for that and ran it through an AI detector. And it said that there was a 40% chance it was generated by AI. And the student was 100% confident that text was not AI generated because it was published 8 months before ChatGPT 3.5 came to market. So the student took that, to the meeting, and it was incredibly contentious, and the case was finally thrown out. But is that the advice that we have for students now? It's like, okay, well, if you are falsely accused, well, then run your faculty members work through. Is that really where we are? So I think that AI detection is an evil that doesn't have a place within the higher ed context.
Yeah, I love that idea of, if you're falsely accused, try to figure out some sort of subterfuge to get around the situation. And I don't think that's going to be the solution at all. And you had also spoken earlier on about flexibility, giving that like 48-hour window, or, that opportunity to get that 48-hour window for late submissions. And I think that's really important because you said a very key sentence. You want the students to do the work. And I think that's a thing that a lot of people don't think about. If you get 20 points off for each day that you're late, what is incentivizing you to do that work? If no matter what, it's going to be affecting your grade negatively. And so by getting that, 48-hour window to not lose, for some people, 20 points a day, that would be you'd be at a 60 maximum that you could get on that assignment. What's going to motivate them?
I remember being a student and having similar things like this. Like, I don't understand the advantage, I still understand the advantage for the class. You ultimately want the student to do the work. That's when the learning takes place. In fact, every assessment we give our students is an act of pedagogy. Every exam we give is the act of pulling things out of your brain, actually strengthens those neural pathways. So you're more likely to remember the information that's actually on that exam than even what was lectured in class or even what the student studied. So recognizing that, it's like, what's more important in your class? Like sort of teaching your student a lesson about responsibility, or the student actually learning and remembering the content within the class. If that's what's on the scales, it's like, well, for me, I want my students to not only do well on my exam, I want them to be able to remember and apply what I teach them in my class well beyond the conclusion of the semester. And if giving students an extra couple of days accomplishes that without grade penalty, why wouldn't I do that?
Exactly. I'm here so the student can learn, not so the student can be penalized. And so any way that I can figure out for them to learn, that's helpful for them. Last night I was talking to my art ed students because, generative art AI has become a very big thing, even more contentious than writing. And I basically had a question. I was just fully devil's advocating them. What's the point of art education if you can just type in painting of a teddy bear and get this perfect, simulacrum, or, quote unquote, perfect simulacrum of a painting of a teddy bear? What's the point? And it was a nice roundtable conversation. And one of the things that they really talked about was that in the art class, it's one of the few places that you're able to really think about critical thinking skills in the K through 12 setting. And your book really encourages that. Your book encourages faculty to continue emphasizing critical thinking skills despite AI's capabilities. Can you talk a little bit about why this is so important and how we can foster that critical thinking?
Well, yeah, I think that you can ask AI to provide an argument for why should Spider-Man be the provost at, name the university, and AI will give you a really good, cogent answer. One AI to the other may have a different kind of answer. Like one might begin by saying, well, this is an interesting hypothetical, but here's an answer. And others will just dive right in with the argument. Like AI is not monolithic. There's a number of different tools out there, Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, and others that are just different brains, so they function differently. So really knowing that AI is in the answer production game, it doesn't necessarily think critically about the question. So like, why should Barbie be the president of the United States? Maybe that's the kind of hypothetical question that AI should think critically about and sort of like kick back and say, well, this could not happen. So why would I engage, in this kind of, you don't get that kind of an answer out of AI. So therefore, things that are more subtle, where there's maybe the response contains some level of bias or some level of ethical concern. Part of what I see as AI literacy isn't just being able to write the right prompt, not just prompt engineering, and it's not just knowing how to use the tools, but it's like knowing what to do with the product, knowing that there are sometimes false citations and other types of hallucinations, that there is bias, that there are maybe sometimes ethical concerns in what the AI recommends. So being a critical thinker is exceptionally important. Like there was something in the Chronicle of Higher Ed, 4 or 5 weeks back, an opinion piece, and someone said, well, well, why would we have AI do this for us whenever we're experts and we should be able to do it ourselves? I said, well, that's not the point. It's not doing it for us. It's doing it with us. It's like the title of the book, Teaching with AI. It's like, it's a collaborator. We're working together. And so that's really what we want to model for students. But all of us, we're lead author. We make the final decision about what we do with that work, and knowing that there are all of these issues with hallucinations and bias, etc., that can be in the product. Thinking critically about every word and every sentence and revising appropriately, those are core skills of the new emerging AI literacy. And that's why we need to be continuing to teach information literacy, critical literacy, things like that as a part of our curriculum to better prepare students in an era of intentional deep fakes, and then AI just producing things that are not accurate or, again, bias or untruth. We all need to have a really critical eye to all of the media that we consume, but certainly as AI provides us with a draft of something, that gets us halfway there. It may save us quite a bit of time, but then we need to lean into that partnership of authorship and make appropriate revisions to make sure that everything is accurate. Because ultimately, if it's got my name on it, I'm the lead author with the AI. I own the responsibility of that final product. So being a critical thinker and being able to make appropriate evaluations and edits, those are going to be prize skills going forward.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that having these critical thinking skills to be aware of what the AI is outputting, but also on top of that, the critical thinking skills to provide solutions, which is not a thing that the AI really does. The AI compiles words or answers or whatever it may be compiling, but it's not creating new solutions. And so if we're not teaching critical thinking at this stage, then what are our students becoming in this AI-focused world? And I think that's a really important point that you bring up in the book, and that's really going to be an important thing to consider going into the future.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree. I really think that it's a shift in sort of like the expectations for many of our courses, certainly our curriculum. You know, whether you're thinking about gen ed or your major, there really has to be somewhere in those curricula places where those types of skills are overtly taught.
100%. Yeah, I think that's as good a place as any to leave off. You know, I still want people to pick up the book. I still want people to see you on May 8th at TLC. So thank you so much for speaking with us. I really look forward to hearing more from you on May 8th at our TLC 24 Teaching and Learning Conference.
Happy to do so, Eric. Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you so much, Eddie.